I'm Russell Payne, and this is another one of the Vindicator's candidate spotlights. Today we'll talk with Dwayne Stovall, a candidate for Congressional District 9. Before I do that, real quick, just want to go over some details about elections. Voters registration deadline, if you're not registered to vote and want to vote in this upcoming primary, February 2nd is the deadline. Early voting is February the 17th through February the 27th. Election day is Tuesday, March the 3rd. We will have two candidate forums, Congressional District 9 and Senate District 3 on February the 11th at 6 p.m. at the Dayton Community Center. The following night, February the 12th, Commissioners Precinct 2 and 4 and the 75th and 253rd District Judge races, again at the Dayton Community Center at 6 p.m. With that said, Mr. Stovall, floor is yours. You want to introduce yourself to folks?
Oh, sure. My name is Dwayne Stovall. I've been a resident here in Liberty County for about 30 years. I am a candidate for Congressional District 9, the newly redrawn Congressional District 9. Used to belong to Al Green, and they have pulled Liberty County out of CD36 and put us in with a number of eastern Harris County precincts and southeast Harris County precincts. It takes in a large number of the industry. It takes in the ship channel. It's pretty important. As far as me personally, my lineage in this district, the way it's drawn out in Liberty County, goes back over 125 years. My great-grandfather planted the Batson Prairie Baptist Church and settled in Dayzetta, and my grandfather and my father both were born in Dayzetta. As a matter of fact, if you go back to the earliest Vindicator copies, you'll find them writing about S.M. Stovall presiding over this or that or whatever, and what they had for lunch and that kind of stuff. Late 1890s, I think, or mid-1890s. I was born in Baytown in what they would refer to as an Humble camp. Any of those old enough who were watching that remember Humble as being the precursor to Esso and Exxon. We moved to Alaska for a couple of years while my father worked on the pipeline, came back to Texas where I met my wife. We graduated high school together. We've been married for we're in our 35th year of marriage. We have 3 children. All 3 are K through 12 raised kids on the Tarkington Prairie where we live now, and I've been a school board member out there for a number of years. We've been heavily vested in the youth programs and students. My wife's a professional teacher. She spent some of her early career at LaPorte. So our ties to this district are very, very deep. For me professionally, I began working, I went to Kilgore Junior College and Southwest Texas State University and took a job with Atlantic Richfield. And that's the old Sinclair plant, for those that know their way around Pasadena. It's the one across from the old Goodyear plant. And it turned into Arco, then it turned into Lyondell, and then it turned into Lyondell-Citgo. And I was with them until January of 2002. While I was there, I formed Diamond K Equipment Incorporated in 1996 and started building bridges for the highway department in 1998. And I did that for about 15 years. We built 60 bridges across the state of Texas over the course of that time. I left there to run that business full time in January of 2002. I started another company in 2011 called Liberty Testing. We do oil field compliance on compressor stations, and that's our primary line of business now. Been in trucking for 30 years. Anybody in Liberty County knows how heavily trucking is here, and if you spend any time on the ship channel, you know how heavy trucking is down that direction. There's a lot of emphasis in trucking right now that it's affected by the federal level that needs to be addressed, and we don't really have a lot of people who are well versed in that particular industry. That said, politically, back 2009 or 10, I was in Austin, and I heard our sitting state representative at that time make an impassioned speech on why the House needed to pass a law that would criminalize people smoking in public restaurants. And the way it was written, if you smoked and you owned a restaurant and your patrons smoked, it criminalized everyone, including you as the property owner. And I about went apoplectic, and I came back. If you remember, we're talking about redistricting. This would have been when they redistricted the last time, and they delayed the voting. Do you remember when they delayed from March to May?
Yes.
Well, they reopened the window to sign up to run.
That's right. Yep.
And I was just dumb enough to sign up to run. And I ran again. It was John Otto. John, I live 18 miles apart. I knew him. I had started going to the legislature in 1999. Back then, there was a Speaker of the House who was a Democrat. I think his name was Laney. And that's how long I've been going to the legislature every session, just about. And kind of learning how it operates. And it led up to me witnessing this impassioned speech where they passed this law. Thank goodness Rick Perry vetoed that law. But it motivated me in a way I'd never been motivated before. And I decided that I would run in that open window. And in that open window, and I don't recommend anybody do that, by the way. 12 weeks in a state race is not, in a state house race is not a good idea. But over the course of that, I pulled about 45% of Walker County, which used to be in our district, and about 43% of San Jacinto County. I spent almost no time in Liberty County because we're both here. He's got a long history here. It wasn't really worth my time. At least I knew that much. But he spent quite a few $100,000 and then had to invest in a race and made him have to come to the table a little bit. And it worked to some advantage. The problem it opened a can of worms for me because personally I was on a pathway of self-study and reevaluating my faith, and all of these things were kind of culminating at the same time. And once I stepped off into the political arena, that's the worst place you could possibly go.
Right.
And I ended up running a statewide race in 2014 against John Cornyn, and the last one I ran was in 2020 against John Cornyn. And I happen to know very, very deeply historical knowledge of how those seats function, this one as well. And I had the biggest campaign, or the largest campaign in the state in 2020. We had over 1,500 volunteers. I pulled somewhere close to 250,000 votes in the primary in 20. And I went home. I had seen the machine up close and personal for too long. My family had struggled for too long dealing with all that. I came home and I thought I was finished. And then back in October, I got a missed call from one of the candidates, our sitting state rep from Baytown. And I called a mutual friend. I said, why am I getting this call? I've known him a long time. And he said, he probably wants to know if you'll support him. And I said, support him with what? And he said, support him with this new district, and a congressional district. And I said, why would I need to support him? And he said, well, because you're in it. I said, why am I in it? And he said, they're pulling Liberty County out. They're putting you in with some East Harris County. This is during special session. They hadn't even released the map yet. And I said, you got to be kidding me. So I called another friend at the legislature and said, do you have a map? And he had me a draft. And I looked at it, and I immediately thought, I don't want to be represented by Briscoe. Well, then I thought, and I can tell you, if you want to hear this, I can tell you. Hey, then I thought, well, another person had put their name in there, and it was Alex Mealy. And I thought, okay, well, I didn't know anything about Alex other than that she was the Republican side of the ticket for the Harris County judges race, and didn't know anything beyond that. And I thought, well, maybe, just maybe, there's a candidate I can get behind and put some resources behind, maybe help her. So at the same time, the same week, is when Lena Hidalgo came out and made a public announcement that she would not seek re-election. And I thought, oh crud. Well, that means, because if you're Miss Mailer, you barely lost the race, and they spent like $8 million. I forget how much it was. It was a ton of money on her. She raised a lot of money. And I thought, well, political science would tell me that she would pivot back and go run for that position if it was going to be open again, because the cultural shift, the way that things are transcending now, I thought that that would just pose for her to pick up that political capital she built across Harris County. And I called Jim McInville. My wife and I have been customers of Jim's for 35 years. And I said, hey, what are the odds of her pivoting back to that position? And he gave me the best answer he could. He said he didn't care what she does, that she's a friend of the family's, and whatever she does, they're going to support her. And which is fair. And he said, that's really a question for Alex. And I said, I agree. And I got her number. I called and left her a message. She called me while I was on my way to Houston with my wife. And she and I talked for about 20 minutes. And in the course of that discussion, I learned that I didn't want her running to represent me. I didn't want her representing me as well. She did answer the question oddly, though. I asked her if there was a chance that she would pivot back to run for that judge's position, and she said no. And I said, okay. I didn't carry on anymore, because if she doesn't think she has a chance, she doesn't think she has a chance. But furthermore, she went on to say that she thought she would have a better chance with her words were, she would have more bang for her buck with the voters in this open seat, this new district, than she would where she was. I didn't understand what that meant at the time, although it sounds like we're trying to buy a seat somewhere where you don't live, because she lives down at the Heights. She's not anywhere close to us and really doesn't have anything to share with us. But I got off the phone with her, and that was the seed. There was just no way I was going to go let this happen. You got to get in this race. I share more in common with the people in this district than just about anybody else in this race. I don't think there's anybody else that has a history like mine, that a work life experience that meets the majority of the people that actually live here. And that's saying something, because there's 755,000 people here, but you know, there's such a large quantity of people here, especially in Liberty County, that work shift work or work for the different companies on the ship channel. I spent 15 years down there. My family lineage is all here. There's really no argument to be made on who has more correlation with the people that live here than myself. What it comes down to is what you're philosophically, how you understand the proper role of government and this position. And there's nobody else in this race that understands this position like I do. And I'm planning on showing that.
Well, that said, what issues do you think matter most to this district? And
well, right now the hot button issue is still immigration, whether people like it or not. You're dealing with, like I said, I've had 30 years in trucking. We've been dealing with non-domiciled illegal drivers forever. I mean, this has been an issue for a very, very long time. And I'd love to see the fact that we're actually moving in a direction to start cleaning that up. I think the Transportation Secretary is doing a wonderful job of that right now. But the states, Texas in particular, has been really on the bad end of that deal, issuing a lot of really poorly thought out licenses. There are times when I was doing bridge work, we'd have a lot of yardage to move. I might call a broker out of Houston and ask for 20 or 30 or 40 tandem dump trucks, and you might get 30, and 25 of them may not speak English. That's a problem. You don't really know how to deal with that at the beginning, but as things go along, you kind of see how it's participated with the federal government's been involved. That needs to be shut down entirely. I also think you can see the perceived danger that's coming across us culturally. A lot of this is more cultural than it is anything else. If you want to protect the future of our children and the American way of life, you have to deal with immigration, and you have to deal with it firmly. You can't be soft around the edges with it. I'm a believer that we need a moratorium on all immigration for 10 years minimum. I also think we need to start stopping issuing any type of work visas of any kind of visa at all needs to be under a moratorium as well. I could see us going back and revoking visas that originate from countries that want to do us harm, or have cultural differences that do not comport with the American way of life or the U.S. Constitution. People are going to argue about that one way or another, but that's actually an authority that the federal government can do. Their control over migration, which has always been confused by most people, the idea that they have some type of control over migration. They do, but it's actually the opposite. If you read your Constitution, they have the ability to limit what comes into your state. You and I and Texans, we've all witnessed for the last 30 or 40 years the federal government take our fruits of our labor and go take our money and go fund the transportation costs of many times military-aged males from countries we don't want to do business with, and they're transferring them here, calling them refugees, and then forcing them into our communities. They've been doing that for decades. Well, they don't really have the authority to do that, but it's as if nobody understands the limitations or the authorities of the office. So right now we're dealing with the outcomes of this. It's not going to be warm and fuzzy. You're going to need people who understand the show and understand the decisions that need to be made that are that hard. And they are hard. Other than that, I think you're always dealing with the biggest animal in the room, and that is that the federal government's too large. It's too large. It's too powerful. It encroaches on our lives too much. And what makes this campaign more unique than any of the other ones I've ever been in is that, and I know you guys are going to host a forum, in the 2 forums I've been to already, you can see the trend moving in the wrong direction for how people expect congressmen to behave. The discussions have been about what can you bring us, and it's like Alex Mueller. Her primary focus is she concentrates on city council members, mayors, and emergency services personnel because that's closely related to her military service. And her argument is she campaigns on I was in the military and I'm going to go get more federal dollars for municipalities. Well, there's no conservative Texan alive who hears that and can't see through the rhetoric and says you're going to go grow the size and scope of the federal government. And that's not conservative. That's not Republican. What we want is someone who's going to go there and limit that government, allow Texans to live their lives according to their will, and let Texans to manage our affairs according to our business, and kind of, to use old language, get them bound down by the chains of the Constitution back to those limited authorities. Can it happen? I don't know, but it's definitely not going to happen if we keep hiring attorneys who see everything through the optics of judges.
Well, immigration. So of course we'll let's bring it back local. Let's bring it to that big issue that everybody loves to talk about, Colony Ridge.
Oh, Colony Ridge. Interesting conversation about that. So you realize where I live. We're about 12 miles from Colony Ridge.
Yep.
So we've watched it develop. Well, we've watched it happen. It's been on the radar for a very, very long time. The practices that they use are totally suspect. We know that there are federal laws in place that are actually criminal that have to do with that. There is a reason that I'm not really sure why. I'm sure there's a reason why they haven't pursued any of that yet, but it needs to happen. We are funding and turning a blind eye to our own destruction. And culturally, and this is why I can't stress this enough, you're going to have to start moving the needle away from policy and into cultural, because the cultural dynamics are more dangerous than the rest. It's kind of like everybody is acting as though it's a brand new day because we have, 38 or 39 Islamic developments going on in the Texas alone right now. Is that problematic? Yes, it absolutely is, which all hinges back to these visas we're issuing and the migration policies that we have, immigration policy. These things can be dealt with, and they can be dealt with at the federal level. Places like Colony Ridge, I would like to see ICE in Colony Ridge every day, and just clean it completely out. What it has done to Cleveland ISD, what it has done to Cleveland proper, what's done to Plum Grove and the citizens around there, it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. And to add to this, give you some juice, so to speak. So I've known Briscoe for about 15 years. So Briscoe's well aware of that. So at our first forum, because he's taken thousands of dollars from Trey Harris, who's a developer of Colony Ridge, he got pinpointed on it. Because everybody knows he's taking money from Colony Ridge, which is a no-no in Liberty County. You're done. Nobody wants you. If you're supported by him, they don't want you. He stands up, he gets a question about Colony Ridge, and he says, well, since you asked me, I've got to come out and say, yes, I've taken money from Colony Ridge, and he didn't really know what it was. Now, he's taken money up through just a couple of years ago. He didn't really understand the extent of it. Well, number one, the guy standing next to him stood up and said, that's great, did you give the money back? And he was stone-faced. He got to me, and I said, first off, this problem's been around for a very long time. He's fully aware. And to say that you didn't realize how bad it was, or to do interviews at that time, he might have even done with y'all, where he played down or downplayed the negative impact of it, that's a sign of a lack of wisdom and discernment. You're either making choices that we don't need people making choices like that, or that's lack of self-awareness. The flip side to that is, in my conversation with Alex Mueller, the only thing I had to offer her was, if you're going to stay in this race, well, at least you've got Briscoe's been taking money from Colony Ridge all this time. She didn't know what it was. She didn't know what, and this is October last year. She didn't know what it was. Now, they've coached her very well to this point to get her up to speed. Now it's very important to her. Didn't have the foggiest idea about it. Came to Cleveland the week after, and someone at one of the coffee talks asked her about Colony Ridge, and she pivoted to be about stray dogs and cats and its impact on Harris County. So they've gotten a hold of her and recoached her. But between her and Briscoe, these are not candidates that represent Liberty County, much less the district at large. So Colony Ridge is a huge, huge problem. I mean, just numbers wise, it can double the size of Liberty County, population wise. And if you do that with a consistent draw of what we have now, which is we got a couple of cartels working out of there, we have illegal aliens coming in droves. If that's the way we're going to do this, then Liberty County is in for a rude awakening in the next 10 years. So I am all for shutting this all completely down and starting from scratch. So
Economic development, it's going to be important for Liberty County going forward. There's efforts in the Dayton area right now. What role do you see yourself playing if elected that you could?
what authority does the federal government have to be an economic development tool to a state?
Yeah, but what that's what I say,
Zero.
because you hear this, you're right. So that's what I'm getting.
Well, because I worked for TxDOT for 15 years, building bridges for them, I understand the mechanisms through like the highway funding. But interestingly enough, my recommendation to state representatives over the last 20 years has been to get Texas, because Texas has been building its own roads and bridges for over 100 years, well over. So, and they're good at it. Like, I mean, we can gripe about different things, but they're very good at it, actually. Funding is always the issue that stops everything. But the tax that you pay on your fuel, that 27 or 29 cents, whatever it is per gallon on gas or diesel, I have always recommended to state legislators that they opt out, write a pretty letter to the transportation secretary and opt out Texas out of the highway funding, the federal highway funding program. Keep the taxes on the fuel in state, because you couldn't do away with that and make our fuel less cost, because that's a commerce issue between the states. But keep that number here instead of sending it to DC and fund our own highway funding. You talk about economic development. Most of this has to do with infrastructure, highways, and funding. If we kept that here, the money issue would almost go away, and you would be able to control that in a much better way. I had somebody say the other day, well, no, we really need federal oversight on the interstates and stuff like that. No, you don't. We actually do all the development for the interstates here. It's not like they have engineers in DC who are making drawings for us.
Right.
We do it all here. All we do is ask for permission. And then they set guidelines that they really don't have the authority to have anyway, but we've got them. And we match their guidelines, and we ask for certain approvals and certain funding issues, and then they control how much you pay on a job site through the Bacon-Davis issues. I've always advocated for us to tell the federal government, thank you very much, but we don't want to participate anymore. Keep that money here. And I've never heard a congressman advocate for that, ever. But you would now.
Interesting. It's an interesting thought. Affordability in the economy.
You're always going to fall back to the federal government. It's got its tentacles into too many things. It's too overregulated in most areas. And regulation always creates the person who gets hit the worst with regulation is the end user, and it's always going to be the person who's paying for something at the counter. So deregulation or lower regulation or smart regulation, which I'm not even sure that even comports with federal government, but in my industry now, like I've got all these years of experience in the highway industry, and Liberty Testing, one of my companies, we deal with TCEQ on a regular basis and the EPA. The TCEQ is perfectly fine. That's controlled by the Texas legislature, which is managed by people that Texans have elected to put in their own house, and we manage industry the way we see fit here locally. If we have a problem with TCEQ, we go to our legislator. If you got a problem with the EPA, there's no way to go to. And there's a disconnect between the state and the EPA, meaning if they don't like what Russell's doing, they don't call your state rep or the governor or the attorney general and say, hey, we need to talk to Russell. They come straight to you, stand on your table and tell you you're out of business. Right. With no one in the state of Texas of authority knowing it, not your sheriff, nobody. They wield that. I've always had a problem with that. Yeah. So this people will say you don't want any regulation at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that regulation closest to you is the best managed regulation. If you have people 1,500 miles to your east trying to dictate how you sell your wares, it's going to be wrong every single time. And it's going to cost people in the end. So shrinking government would effectively, not that we can, I'm just saying, if the attempt to shrink government will always have a positive benefit on the cost end for the user. More regulation will always drive costs up every single time. And I think we've had enough of that.
Education appears to be an important thing to you. So you're on the school board in Targeton.
Been on school board off and on since 2010. I can't remember the first year. It's been a long time.
What role do you see in education at the federal level?
Well, that's an interesting topic because there's no authority in the Constitution for the federal government to be involved in education at all, and they weren't. As a matter of fact, the Department of Education on the federal level has only existed since I was about 15, and people think it's been around forever. I've spoke to a group of Republican students at Sam Houston State not a couple 3 years ago, and they were college Republicans. And I said, how many of you think we should abolish the Department of Education at the federal level? And they were all like, oh, I don't know about that. Education is so important. These are Republicans. And I said, well, it's only been around. I asked them how long they thought it had been around. Well, they thought it had been around forever.
Right.
And I said, no, it's relatively new. I said, so I want you to understand something. You're saying that without a federal oversight of Department of Education, your grandparents and your great-grandparents must have just been dumb. And they said, oh, no. And I said, put it in context. Who controls your child's education better, you or somebody in another state? You do. So how does it work in scale? You have over 55 million students, K through 12, spread across 50 different states. How are a few hundred or a few thousand even, much less 435 legislators, 1,500 miles to our east, how are they going to dictate to us how we teach our children, or dictate to 55 million students how their lives are going to be managed, how their education is going to be managed every single day? They shouldn't. So people who scoff at the idea of shutting down the Department of Education on the federal level, they need to check into that, because what you're asking for is centralized authority over your child from afar with people you can have no influence with. So I'm an advocate, and my wife's been a professional teacher for many years. She's a special ed teacher. I love the entire concept of education and helping the teachers out. But right now, being on the school board, I'll tell you firsthand, federal and state obligations and restrictions put on teachers makes their lives a daily hell. I mean, it's just terrible. And until you can get the government out of that and get them back to just teaching. I'll give you a statistic. In Texas alone, by the way, education has overcome everything in the budget in Texas. We're now larger than all the healthcare, everything. It's the largest single expense item we have. If you go back to 1980, 80% of the education budget of the state of Texas went into the classroom with the teachers and the students. I think now that number's around 40 or 39. So where's that money going? It's going into bigger and bigger bureaucratic aspects of policy and the people between your local school board and the state board of education. So I'm for overhauling this thing, but not with a fork and a pencil. I need a knife. They need to butcher this thing and get it back to just teachers and doing their thing. And people have such a hard time. They look at school boards and they think that they're independent, and they're not independent at all. Well, I tell people, they get bothered when you tell them this at board meetings. If I get a chance, I'll remind people who attend, we're not an independent agency. We are literally a government agency. And we are making decisions based on offerings that the state government or the federal government gives us. We're not creating our own decisions. If I come to you and say, okay, Russell, here's 3 options I want you to pick from, and you come and say, I don't like any of those options, I'd really rather do this. In a school situation, you can't say, oh, well, then we'll do that. You got to say, well, we don't get any money if we don't pick one of these 3. Those are the 3 they gave us.
Right.
So getting the government as far away from education as possible is my goal. Federal government needs to get out of it entirely, wholesale. And I think we need to start talking about that more and more, and I think we can get there.
It's definitely becoming a more talked about subject.
I think it's going to go that direction.
Okay. Well, how can folks learn more about your campaign?
I'm really easy to find out about. You can go to one of three places. You can either go to DwayneStovall.com, or you can go to LessDCMoreTexas.com, or you can go to PuttingTexasFirst.com. They will all lead you to me. You can find out anything you want. My cell phone number is on the About page on my website. If you have any questions at all, please call me. Try to think, is there anything else you'd want to know? There's plenty more we could talk about, but you got the gist of it.
And we will talk more about it on the 11th of February at 6 p.m. at Dayton Community Center.
Absolutely.
We'll have CD9 and SD3. The following night, we will have on the 12th of February, Precinct 2 and 4 for Liberty County Commissioners Court, the 75th and 253rd District Court judges races, both at the Dayton Community Center. Deadline to register to vote is February 2nd. Early voting begins February 17th and runs through February 27th. And Election Day is Tuesday, March the 3rd. You want to make a final pitch to folks?
Hey, don't go for the shiny objects. You have two people who are going to be shoved in your face all day long, and they share the same money. The same pool of money is coming at these people. And these pools of money are not in your district. They fund Democrats as well as Republicans. This is not a principled money situation. You're just going to have a lot of money thrown at you. Don't elect another attorney. You need to elect one of our own. That's why I'm running.
We appreciate it. Good luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you, Russell.
Thank you.